It's time for a new evolution in raising golfers, one that doesn't involve headaches, tears, or heading down the path of unknown. Whether you're trying to introduce children to the game of golf, help them play competitively, or play at a collegiate level, you're in the right place. This show is for any parent, player, or coach who wants to build a better team at home and on the golf course. This is the Raising Golfers Podcast. Hello, everyone. For some of you out there and some of those areas where you got lost on the ground, I believe that the golf season is just around the corner. Today we have another exciting interview this week with a fantastic golf coach, Michelle Holmes, who's had worldwide recognition for the junior golf initiatives she has taken.
Enjoy every stage of the journey. These kids grow up way too fast. Please enjoy every stage. And just always arrive at the golf course a happy family, and always leave the golf course that same happy family.
The Michelle Holmes School of Golf mission is to create experiences that encourage kids to want to play the game forever. Her School of Golf lives by this mission every day by providing a fun and inviting environment for peewees, juniors, and students of all ages. Today we're going to talk about the best experiences for children, tournament play, and encouraging children to play this game forever. Hope you enjoy it. Michelle Holmes, I'm so excited to have you here and join me on the Raising Golfers podcast. And, from everything I've seen from your social media and things that you post, it just resonates so well with what I'm trying to do here with the podcast. So welcome. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Travis, thank you for having me. I absolutely love your podcast. I think it's such a great resource for parents. So I hope all the parents out there are taking full advantage of your episodes.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And, today's episode, I'm stealing this from you. I don't know if this is necessarily your slogan or what you preach, but I want to call this creating experiences that encourage kids to play the game forever. And this is what like I said, I don't know if that's your slogan, but I'm sure it's what you preach to everybody that comes through your doors. Is that right?
Yeah, it is our slogan. When I opened our kids' golf school back in 2011, I knew I wanted to put all my focus into junior golf, but I had to sit down and kind of really think about what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish here with these kids. And that's where the mission came about, to create experiences that encourage kids to play the game forever. And when I think back to 2011, at that point, all I was really trying to do was, to make sure that when kids came to my golf classes, came into my golf program, that they were having a good experience, that they were learning, and that they were basically running home and asking their mom and dad, hey, I want to go back to the golf course again. So it was quite a simple concept then. And I thought if I stuck to that, I could create a lot of lifetime golfers. And then as my career moved on and I got really involved in the tournament side of the golf industry, I guess the mission has kind of evolved a little bit, in that I started to realize when I was at these tournaments that how important parents are in the kids' golf journey. And I started to realize that I don't need to just take care of these children. I need to make sure I'm helping these parents on their journey too. And by helping these parents, that's going to help me create that whole experience for that child. And what I was seeing at these golf tournaments was I was seeing a lot of parents who had great intentions that would do absolutely anything for their children. But They were making, a lot of mistakes. And, it's a hard task out there for parents, to be the parent caddy, the parent coach. So I think it's important that junior coaches like myself are not just helping the child, we're helping the whole family along in this golf journey.
Couldn't agree more.
So that all started with created experiences that encourage kids, but it's kind of evolved over the years as I've grown as a coach.
Well, like I said, yeah, I mean, you summed up everything for the podcast. If anything happens to me, you might have to take this over. But and we're going to touch on some of those things because, we're going to touch on those experiences, encouragement, and tournament play as well, because I know these are all things that you're involved in. And I guess the first question I kind of have for you is, with the experiences for kids, like, would you say that, do you educate or involve children more in the learning process? Like, what is it that you kind of do?
Well, first off, I guess when I'm trying to create an experience for a child, I guess the first thing is we've got to realize that an experience for a child is going to be very different to what my experience would be if I wanted to start a sport. So I think when I think of, what do children want from an experience, they definitely want to have fun. They want to, enjoy it. They want the social aspects. But children definitely want to learn too. I mean, children are keen learners, especially if we are learning or teaching them the way they actually know how to learn. And whether it's playing through games, whether it's using relative golf terms. Like, I think it's pretty cool how coaches who have specialized in junior coaching, they can take the most scientific golf terms and translate it so that a 4-year-old can understand it. So I think, when we're trying to create that experience, we're trying to make it enjoyable, we're trying to give them the correct learning experiences. And I think the other thing that we have to make sure we're doing is we have to make sure that we're setting them up for success. Especially when we're talking about introducing 6, 7, 8-year-old kids to the game. Golf can be a very daunting sport, so we've got to make sure we're setting them up for success. Kids love to succeed; they take pride in things that they do. So whether that's just making sure that they're, they're in the correct golf equipment or playing the correct yardages, for their particular standard at the time, I think that all goes a long way.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting is I read your posts and the things that you put out on your social
Harp
media,
on about.
and yes, and harp on about yes,
Yeah.
and I've got to pull one up right now, which I'm going to do because and I was reading this. I read it to my wife last night, and it's like perfect not only just for like kids, but it's like perfect for life. Okay, so you got this one from Coach Jim Hardy, and I'm just going to read it out so everybody can hear it. Okay, so if our kids know we love them when they fail, they become bulletproof and aren't afraid to try. By
Mhm.
contrast, though, if they get the impression we love them more when they succeed, they become careful and timid. And oh, I just loved this. And like,
I
I,
share
I
that
just,
everywhere. I love what you said there.
I mean, it's just like if you just think about that, right? Like as
Mhm.
an adult, and not even just a parent, but even as a coach as well. Like there's just so much gold within that. But you have to, as an adult, I think you have to kind of take a few steps back and think about that big picture of what it is you're actually trying to do with this junior golfer and this child. And like some of the things you said, you kind of have to understand that they learn a little bit differently than we do as adults. So, with that thing that you posted from Coach Jim
Mhm.
Hardy and what
Mhm.
you've just said, how could a parent specifically, like, what can they do to better understand this developmental process of junior golfers?
Um, so I'm actually reading Jim's thing here now again for kids. So I just think, going back to what Jim said there, I think, if kids know we love them when they fail, if kids know we love them when they fail, they become bulletproof. I think when you read that statement, I mean, that brings up that's not just about your relationship with your child in golf. That's just about your relationship with your child in life. And if you make those mistakes in golf, that's going to transfer over into their everyday life. But that's a huge issue. But as far as on the golf course, I think it's this game. This is a game we cannot play with fear, right? We're not going to
No.
succeed at this game if we're playing in fear. And a lot of kids are playing in fear, and they're playing in fear of repercussions of what's going to be said to them after the round of golf, or how disappointed mom and dad are going to be. Um, so, what I always tell parents is that, when you're out there caddying for your child, you're 50% of that team. You have the honor of caddying for your child, and you're 50% of that team. And if you were out playing a doubles tennis match and your teammate wasn't playing well, what would you try and do? You would try and bring your A game, right? And I think that's what parents have to remember. The day the kid doesn't bring their A game, that's the day that they're going to turn and look to the parent the most. And what are you teaching them in that moment? Are they turning around and seeing a parent who's hanging their head or annoyed that the kid has hit a bad shot, or getting stressed out under stressful situations? Because if that's what you're doing, that's what your child is going to grow up and be themselves.
Right.
So I think, am I kind of gone off topic there a bit?
That's okay. Keep it rolling.
I could go on and on and on. But yeah, I think it's just important for parents to keep things in perspective and just realize when we're out there in the tournament fields with kids, especially with little children, they have so much to learn. I mean, the real reason for me as a coach, the real reason I tell my parents to go play in US kids golf tournaments is because this is a great learning opportunity. It's a great chance for kids to get out, have fun on the golf course, play with other kids, and learn something new every time they step out there on the golf course. I mean, the golf course is going to be their greatest teacher, right?
Hmm.
And so I think sometimes when parents get out there and they kind of forget those things, and they kind of look at it as in, okay, let's compare my child to the other child, or why is my child finishing fifth every week? And I think it's just important to remember that this is a long, long journey. And don't compare your child to, I think it's actually insulting to actually compare your child to another child. This is your child's personal journey. This is your family's journey, and don't let anyone else affect that.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. No, I think you answered a few questions I wanted to already
Sorry.
ask, but that's okay
Okay.
because I got another one for you. So then, because
Okay.
I think a lot of people have this question, and even as coaches, I think sometimes we're not exactly sure what advice to give. But when do you think is a good time to get your child involved in tournaments like US Kids?
I'm a huge advocate for getting them in young. I know some people. I've sat in seminars and I've heard people talk about people much smarter than me, and I've heard them talk about kids shouldn't compete until they're 12 years old, and I think, wow, am I doing something wrong here for these kids? But I'm a huge advocate of getting kids on the golf course and getting them in these US kids events, PGA junior leagues, whatnot, as young as possible, as long as the team of adults around them are doing their job correctly. I mean, I think my own family is a perfect example. And my little niece, she's now 6, and she's got a nice little swing. She kind of shoots in the upper 40s. She's doing fine out there. But she wanted to play in a US kids golf tournament right before her 5th birthday because she saw her friends who were 6 and 7 years old playing, and she wanted to go play. And I thought, are we crazy putting her in there? And then I thought, no, we're not crazy. I know my sister is going to do the right things. There's going to be no pressure on it. And she's good. We're just going to let her go out there, have fun with her friends. That's all she wants to do. And we know that she's going to learn a lot of things out there. We know that, as I said earlier, that golf course is her greatest teacher. So why not let her out there? And she did. She learned so much.
And
One of
it's
the
been a good
proudest.
experience, yeah.
It's been a great experience. One of the proudest moments for me is, the first season, she wouldn't shake hands with the other players after the round of golf. She was just so shy. And to see her after the 8th tournament, pick her ball out of the hole and just turn around and put her hand out, I was like, that's what it's all about at this age,
Mm.
you know. And
That's
you've got
awesome.
to you've got to appreciate the little steps along the way and not get too wrapped up in the end result. And I know, even using my niece's example, she's doing fine. She's just an average little, 6-year-old golfer. As I said, she's kind of shooting up her 40s. Some days it might be 60s, and some days it might be mid 40s. And we're having a great old time out there. She's learning a lot. We're having a wonderful family experience. But then sometimes my dad, and he'll send me a video of this like 6-year-old phenom, and then I'm like,
Hmm.
I feel the pressure there for a second, and I'm like, oh, is that my dad telling me that Katie's not at this level, or am I not doing enough for her? So I understand what it's like for parents, but then I quickly snap out of that because I realize we're on a lifelong journey,
Right.
and and I'm not too worried about what she's doing at 6. I'm more worried about giving her a great experience in this game, and if she wants to take it somewhere else, well, that's on her. And one thing I always say to parents, I say, if you want your kid to be a lifelong golfer, hopefully they will. But if you want them, let's say, to be a college golfer or tour player or whatever, I say, it's a long time from age 5 to age 18, and sometimes this can be a hard sport to keep them in. So I always say, if you can get your kid to age 12, 13, still really, really loving this game, well, then the possibilities become endless, because that's the age they're really, really going to take ownership of themselves. But the only way they're going to take ownership of that game and really work hard at it is if at 12, 13, is if they really have developed an undying passion for it.
Oh yeah. I mean, 100%. Like I've seen kids go both directions from that at about that age, right? Where it's either they take ownership or they decide to just walk away from it, right? And I totally agree with everything you said there. And I think it's so important to to create that positive environment and keep that kind of lifelong mindset going through the process, because like you said, with the comparisons, it's just so easy to do, isn't it? Like as an adult, as a coach, as a parent, it's just so easy, even for you with your niece, just to when you see that, you have that quick flash in your head and your thoughts, right? But
Yeah,
then it, like you said, for somebody like yourself, it's you're able to obviously get back on
snap
track with
out of it.
correct
Yeah,
mindset,
yeah.
right? Because you've got a lot of experience in this, right? But maybe for a parent who has only had, this is their oldest child, this is their first time going through this, it is difficult, right? But I
Hmm.
guess the only way you can relate is if you've played sports, or just even remember maybe even an education where, like, there might have been a time where you weren't as good as somebody else, let's just say,
Hmm.
in another sport, basketball, okay? But then you got to a certain age where actually you surpassed them, right? So if you think about that,
Exactly.
it's like it didn't matter what you were doing at 7, right? If the goal
And
was to become better, it can still happen. Maybe that's not even the goal, but if that is one of the goals, that
right.
there's still plenty of time for that to happen, right? But
You
I
know,
love. Go ahead.
one example I use is one of my favorite personal junior golf stories. Is when I was 12 years old, I played at my first Irish Championship. So I was playing at a decent, I was a decent enough golfer. But anyways, I was the last qualifier, and I had to play the number one junior in golf in Ireland in match play. So maybe she qualified number one, I qualified number 32, and I was 12 and she was probably 15, and she beat me on the 10th hole, right?
Hmm.
So I went in and I rang my dad afterwards because he wasn't at the game. And he was like, "You mean she beat you on every hole?" And I didn't completely understand match play. And I was like, "Dad, I promise she didn't beat me on every hole. I definitely won one or two holes." But I didn't understand, I guess my thoughts were in check. But so she beat me on a hole 10. And then when I was 16, I got to play her again. So she would have been 19 at the time. And I beat her 4-3. So it
No
just
way.
shows you how and that's always stood out in my head. And it's an example I use um, for all, for parents who, ask me about that kind of thing.
I love that. Yeah, that's great, and I think I think that's just a perfect example, isn't it, of what can happen, and everything you've said. But again, going back to your slogan, like play the game forever, right? And like, as adults, we have to keep that in mind, and I just think it's so important. So great information as far as how to talk to kids during tournaments, when to get them involved. But I want to jump forward now into kind of a little bit of encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
So I put this together for you, the encouragement fire round. So I'm going to ask you
So
just
good.
some of these questions. Give me your like give me your kind of like, it doesn't have to be too long, doesn't have to be too short, but just give me
Okay.
the answer you've got that first comes to mind. And
Okay.
the first one I'm going to do is about tournaments, and then we'll go from there about more into some of the encouragement stuff, and how adults can help with this process. So the first one is, your child just had a bad round of golf in a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What do you say?
I think you do the exact same thing you do when your child has a great tournament. If you go for ice cream when your child does well, I think you should go for ice cream. And when your child doesn't do well, and I think that's something that we don't see, and it's sad to see. And I think it's just keeping it as simple as that, because this is supposed to be a quick fire round, right? I could go on
It's
and
okay.
on and
Keep
on.
going.
No, let's just leave it at that. I think just whatever you would do after um, a good round of golf, you do the same thing after a bad round of golf. You want to show your young child that this isn't a big deal,
I love that.
right?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yep. So now here's the next one. Your child doesn't want to practice, but rather just go and play. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think it's fine. That's a question's been asked to me a lot over the years. I think especially for young kids. And for young kids, there's going to be no greater teacher than that golf course. Get out and play as much as you can. So if that's what your child wants to do, yes. I think as they get into the older teenage years, they have to learn a little bit more about effective practice and grinding it out on the driving range too, spending that time doing that. But no, as far as a young child, if they just want to go play, just go play.
Mm,
That,
okay,
that
great.
golf course is a great coach.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a lifelong coach, isn't it?
And if they're telling you as well, and again, I keep going back to little kids again, if they're telling you they want to go play rather than go stand on the driving range, then that's obviously what they're enjoying right now. And that's again, we're just trying to um to create that experience, right? And if that's what they're enjoying, then that's what you should go do.
Mm, okay,
And the other thing I would
great.
say on that is a lot of parents will come to me and say, my child doesn't like to practice. And like I had a dad come to me last semester and he said, my kid loves to come play golf with you. He's running in here and he wants to come to your class. And when he comes to the driving range with me, he doesn't seem to have any fun. And I was like, well, have you talked to your kid about it? And he said, no. And I said, well, I mean, you got to go ask your kid what the problem is. He'll tell you what the problem is. And so he came back to me. He said, I asked him, and he said that, when he's at class, your games are more fun. And so I said, well, you know what I'm going to ask you to do? I'm going to ask you to get your kid a box and take your kid to the Dollar Tree and let them buy a few gadgets. And this is going to be their golf toolbox. And this is going to be a box of little gadgets that your kid can make up their own games when they come to practice, whether it might be distance putting games or something on the putting green. And it is fun to see that dad out there and the kid with the box, and he comes with his box of golf tools, and they set up their little games. But again, just the dad didn't, when an adult goes to the golf course, it's fun for them just to go hit balls on the driving range. He didn't understand that maybe that wouldn't be fun for his child. But that dad was open to what I told him, and it was a good learning experience for him.
Oh,
And it
that's
was
a
a good
great.
learning experience for me too, in the fact that and the dad was like, yeah, I see these games, but I'm not sure what you're doing. And I was like, well, these games aren't just for us to mess about on the putting green. These games are for us. These are ways that, that your child is learning. And so it was important. It's important for us as coaches to relay this information to the parent.
Mm, I couldn't agree more. Yes, I couldn't agree more. We might come back and actually touch on that point a little bit after this fire round
Mhm.
because I've got some questions about that. So
I'm not very
here's the
good at
next one.
fire round, am I?
It's okay. It's my first time too.
Okay, okay. Try
Okay.
and error.
So here's the next one. Your child doesn't seem to be progressing. Should
Mhm.
you be worried? And what should adults understand better about child development?
No, I don't think that's anything to worry about. Children are going to progress at different times. One toddler walks at 10 months, the next toddler walks at 16 months. I mean, they all eventually figure it out. And I think that example that I used earlier of my own personal example of when I was 12 years old and got beat on the 10th hole and then turned it around, 4 years later. Um, so no, don't stress it and don't compare your child to anybody else. It's their own personal journey. That's the beauty of this sport. So that's
I agree. I agree. Here's the last one. It's a tournament one. Again, back to the tournaments. Okay.
yeah.
Let's just say I'm a parent, right? And so, my child's just lost the tournament by one, and
Mhm.
my child's crying, is upset. What do you say to your child to bring them up? Whether we can still be at the ice cream parlor. What do we say to bring them up to help them understand this process and give them some encouragement to maybe try to get a little bit over the fact that they lost by one in the tournament?
Yeah, I try to get ahead of the game with that in a number of ways. So with my kids, I'm constantly, and now this might be kids that are maybe just a little bit older, but I'm constantly telling them that true success, and I try and get my parents to get on board with this, is true success is showing up prepared. And if you show up to every tournament prepared, well, you give it your best shot. I mean, you can't control what another kid shoots. You can't control what the golf gods are throwing at you that day, but you can control whether you showed up prepared or not. And when my kids win or lose a tournament, I don't ask them too much about the winning or losing or how many shots. I always just go back to, did you show up prepared? And as long as you showed up prepared, well, then you can sleep well at night. And I think if we instill that in kids young, I think it's easier for them to accept those moments where they went out and played, gave it their all, and maybe lost by one.
Oh, I love that. I think that was summed up so well, and I totally agree that like that question, and we can all be guilty of this as adults, but that question I think it was answered perfectly because the answers actually should have been done before the tournament and those
Yes.
conversations that you might have, and like I said, and preparedness could even be beyond just how you execute your shots or how you prepare to play the golf course. It could also just be the mindset that you have. Now, sure, you want to win, but you know we know this game, and there's only one person that wins, in whether
Yeah.
it's your age group or your division or just the whole tournament. So, let's just say a professional tournament, there's 125 players in the field. Well, there's only one winner out of those 125. So that means there's 124 other people that don't win, right? And so,
Exactly.
and, you
Exactly.
know, and not that you want to go in with the mindset that you're going to lose every time, but understanding that that's part of the process, and that those are going to be some of the stepping stones that you have to go through, and the ups and downs that you have to go through to eventually, if your goal is to become number one, that's what you have to go
Yeah.
through to get there, right? So I think that's perfect.
I love what Gavin from Leadbetter Kids, he talks so much about failure being part of the process. And I just love that he's shouting that from the rooftops,
Hmm.
because I think he's exactly right. I think sometimes when people are hit with failure, they're not prepared for it. And when you're not prepared for it, you don't know how to deal with it. And that's where we see a lot of chaos happening out there between parents and kids. So, yes, having a lot of these conversations beforehand goes a long way.
Yes, I totally agree, and that was why I seeked out Gavin to come on my
I love Gavin.
podcast and do that episode. Failure is a feature, right, rather than failure is failure, right? Because again, I think we're all guilty of it. I mean, I think about myself. I've been guilty of it, right? I put my hands over my head after something goes wrong, and I just think, okay, I'm the worst, and you know, but I've come to my senses and realized that not just in golf but in life, that's just part of the process, and I think we have to take the best from those failures and learn from them and excel from them, right? And so I
Do
totally
you
agree.
agree as a I guess do you as a parent out there, do you agree with what I said earlier as far as like I've watched so many journeys unfold. Some of these people I've coached, some of them I just watched them from a distance at golf tournaments. But I really go back to, the parents' behavior and how the parents are reacting to bad shots and how the parents are reacting under pressure. And that child really, a young child, I always say a young child doesn't have a mental game. You are their mental game. They haven't developed a mental game yet.
Hmm.
So you've seen it too out there where you might see a dad out there with a 7-year-old child, and the dad's kind of freaking out a little bit, and the child is seeing this, and then I watched that child at 13 years old, and that's what they've developed, and that's who they are now. So I think it's just so important that parents remember that children are good imitators and they're watching you. So,
Absolutely.
rather than be worried about the scores and how my child finished in this US Kids tournament, be worried about what values that you're teaching them and what traits you're teaching them. And composure and patience are two of the greatest traits we need in this sport. So, I know, if well, I don't caddy for my niece, but if I was out there caddying for her, that's what I would be worried about as her caddy. That I'm showing her the right traits and values that she's going to need if one day she wants to be a successful golfer.
Right. No, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, I I used to this is back in 2012 to 2016. I was helping run the US Kids Tour in the San Francisco Bay Area. And at
Okay.
the time, it was the largest tour, I believe, in the world at the time. It was, I mean, it was big. I mean, I think
Yeah,
it
they
was just
always have a
crazy. But
big one.
anyways,
Yeah.
I've seen, you know, I've seen a lot of stuff on the golf course, good and bad. But anyways, I think the best advice for somebody in multiple areas, whether you're caddying or watching as an adult, was actually from
Mhm.
Gavin as well. And he said, just get a really nice camera and just take a ton of pictures, you know. And I
I
think about
saw
that, and it's
that,
like,
yes.
right, and so it's like,
Yeah.
let's just say you struggle with, you know, your expressions or your the things you might the body language and all that stuff like that. Well, if you got this camera, it's like giving a speech and holding the pen, right? It's like a distractor, you know. So if you
Yes,
got this
yes.
camera, like, you don't even have to take a picture. It's like if you see him miss a putt, just put your face in the camera and, like, you know, and the kid looks at you, you know, they're not gonna think so much, right? Like, you know, they're not
Yeah.
gonna be worried about what your reaction is. And so it's like I just thought that was so good. And like, and he's like, Gavin's like, you'll get great pictures, and on top of that, like, you know, it'll be you as an adult, you're a distractor as well, and for the kid as well.
Yeah.
You know, they're not gonna be thinking so much about you watching and, like, you know, not hovering over them, but just kind of like so focused on every single move they make, whether it's good or bad. And so I really liked that, and I thought that was good a piece of advice.
Yeah, he's thrown out a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, he definitely drops some gold.
What I love about Gavin too is he's been through it. Like, I'm not a parent myself, so sometimes it's kind of hard for me to completely delve into it. But he puts out a lot of his experiences that he went through with his son, and I think that's so valuable for parents to be able to use as a resource.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're gonna move forward now into the last part of your slogan, playing the game forever. Okay.
Yeah,
So this is kind of broad, but you know, the question I have so would be is like, how would you recommend keeping the game fun and exciting along the way for different ages? So maybe you can, like, just give us like a snapshot of, like, okay, what it looks like of, like, at a 5-year-old age, maybe 8 to 10, and then in the teenage age, and just kind of give us a snapshot of how you kind of see that progressing, where it's fun the whole way and the kids love the game and play forever.
yeah. First, can I touch on that play forever? Where that really came out of it was that was kind of a personal thing too for me, and because I feel like when I was growing up as a junior golfer, and my dad was definitely a competitor. He played a lot of sports. He was all about winning, and I feel like golf became something kind of not a job, but the only reason I was out there was to compete. I wasn't out there for any other reason other than to compete. So, and I played college golf, and then my last round of college golf, I absolutely cried from the first tee box to the 18th green because I knew it was over. And for about 2 years after college, I didn't touch a golf club.
Is that
Because to
right?
me, if someone said to me, if you said to me, hey, Michelle, let's go play 9 holes for fun, I was like, I would look at you and be like, for fun? What do you mean for fun? I only go play 9 holes if I'm trying to beat you, and if there's a
Right.
competition. And so that's where that kind of came from. So what I'm always trying to tell parents is, yes, I hope your child grows up in a great college golfer and goes on to the LPGA tour. Sure, I get you have all those dreams, but a lot of people don't make it that far. And I would just like to think, hopefully, I'm creating an experience for kids that the day they do have their last round of college golf, it's not just about the competition for them, that they've fell in love with the game for a lot of other reasons too, and I guess appreciate the game for a game for a lot of other reasons too. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
So
does.
that
Yeah,
they
of course.
continue it.
Of course. So that's I think that totally makes sense for the whole. And I mean, I love that example and that story that you had. And it's funny because I don't want to get too far off track, but a lot of coaches in any sport, right? They've become coaches and extremely knowledgeable in their trade because of the experiences that they've had, whether it's become making it all the way to the professional level or even not, right? Because there's so
Right.
much that goes on before reaching the professional level, and that's what this podcast is about. But um, you know, we've all had experiences, we've all had the ups and downs, we've all had those learning opportunities and experiences, and sometimes maybe we didn't um, maybe we didn't make it to the next stage, but maybe we can
Hmm.
look back and reflect on maybe what it was that we didn't do to make it to the next stage, or what it was that why we lost that tournament. And you know, we can better understand that as we get older and remember what our
Exactly.
feelings were and what we did, and then we can, you know, help our students
Others.
or children learn from what we've learned, and like I said, whether it's good or bad. And so I really enjoyed that story you said there, because I think it's it's just can resonate with so many people, and so many people have probably the exact same story as you, but in that moment we all think, oh, we're the only ones that's finished in college golf, and you know and competition and everything, right? And that's the moment we all live in. But the reality is, like, so many other people, they want to be able to hear those stories, because it's like, oh, I was that person too, and
Mhm.
hear how we've kind of succeeded from that. So give me, like, if you can, like, just so parents can better understand, like, what would be a fun activity for a 5-year-old, and then we'll kind of, yeah, if you can kind of just break it down, because I think fun's different for everyone, but
Yeah.
just just kind of real quick, just so they kind of have an idea of what the difference is and how to kind of keep them enjoying the game along
Engaged,
the
yeah.
way.
So when I think of my Pee Wee golf classes, I mean, we're teaching a lot through games, and I'll explain that. But we're keeping the classes short. So you definitely want to keep the practices or your time at the golf course short for a little on the shorter side for your child, and maybe divide your time up. Um, maybe 10 minutes putting games, 10 minutes chipping games, 10 minutes maybe fun, maybe sports exercises. But I guess the biggest thing, yes, is that you want to open the child's mind. You want them to allow them to use their imagination. You want to allow them to use their creativity. I mean, kids are very creative, and um, example, I was chipping with my niece there last week. This will be an example for a parent, maybe of a 5-year-old. And yeah, I could have stood there and just chipped with her and lectured her on her fundamentals, and it would have went in one ear and out the other. But instead, we put a circle out on the green, and I was like, and she came up with the idea that the circle was the ocean, and that the golf balls were going to be her fish, and she was going to chip her fish into the ocean. And I'll tell you, in that moment, I've never seen a kid so determined to get these golf balls in a circle, because she really wanted those fish to go back in that ocean. So I think that's probably sometimes it sounds silly, doesn't it? But it's the way kids learn at that age.
Well, Kate Tempesta says, like, we're wired for story, right? So basically, you pretty
Yeah.
much wired her for a story there with getting the fish back in the ocean, and whether it's hitting golf balls, baseballs, basketballs, for a kid at that age, it probably doesn't matter. But now they've got this story behind it where it's encouraging them, and it's fun to, you know, get the balls in the circle.
Yeah, and then I say when they get a little bit older, maybe at that age, 5, 6, you're really you're helping them come up with these little stories and games and whatnot. And then when they get a little bit older, I'm a really big fan of letting them create their own games. I mean, some of the games that you see me put out on social media, I get great credit for those games. People are always writing to me, telling me how good they are. I didn't make up any of those games. My 7 and 8-year-olds in the class made up those games, and I just get to take credit for them.
That's
Uh,
funny. That's great. I love that.
but I think especially at that age, it's for the newer golfer, the intermediate golfer, when they're making up their own games, they're going to be more, they're going to own them more. They're going to have a better self. They're going to take pride in them. They're going to want to accomplish them. So I think that's super important. I think it's very important for kids. I wish I was seeing kids get on the golf course more. I think we're still seeing too many situations where kids are coming to golf classes and learning to play the game, um, but not having the opportunities to get out on the course. And I know my own program has been guilty of that, and that's why I try and get them into PGA Junior League and US Kids as much as possible. But last year we really made an effort to get the kids on the golf course a lot more, get them more playing opportunities, not just in tournaments, just but with little leagues, maybe little 3-hole leagues for our little 6-year-olds, 6-year-old beginners, and so on. And that I think that really went a long way. I was going to say, and then as far as I'm just trying to think of the different kind of age brackets, but of course we're always going to talk about girls, and especially when they hit that 11, 12, 13-year-old age, it's hard to keep them in the sport. And, that's at an age where, girls place so much importance on friendships at that age. So it's important for us as coaches to encourage these friendships and realize that that's a big part of our job. I mean, if we're trying to coach 12, 13, 14-year-old girls, we've got to be creating those bonding or friendship experiences for them if we want to keep them in the game. And I think parents need to realize that too. I can't tell you how many times I've had maybe a kid, a little girl, she's in group classes until she's maybe 10 years old, and she's getting, and she's doing private lessons too, and she's developing. And then the parents will say to me, you know what, I think we're just going to focus on private lessons now. And I said, don't do it. Because at the end of the day, she may be good, but she's still a 10 or 11-year-old girl at the end of the day, and she needs those social experiences too.
Mm, I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. So, with that, then, what should parents be looking for in a junior golf program?
Junior golfer, okay, I think obviously good coaching. But I think probably the biggest thing for little kids is that coach-player relationship. Oftentimes we might have a kid who's moving to Florida here, and the parents will say, "How am I going to find you in Florida or wherever they're moving to?" And I'll say, go to the US Kids website, look up who the junior golf coaches are in your area, and maybe pick out 2 or 3 different programs and let your child try out the 2 or 3 different programs. Your child will tell you who the right coach is for them, especially in those early days, because that coach player relationship is so important. What else would you be looking for in a junior golf program? I think, parents love structure, kids love structure. So I think that's important. Developmental plans are important, but I think more so than just development. Of course, a long-term developmental plan is great for those people who have those aspirations. But I think one of the biggest mistakes I made as a young coach was I just presumed, and I think I get this from my father, I just presumed that every coach, every kid that walked in the door wanted to be the next Tiger Woods, let's say. So can
Mhm.
you imagine the pressures I was putting on myself, I was putting on kids, and these kids might not have wanted this at all. And so one thing I do now when a family come into my program is I sit down and I have a 30-minute meeting with them, and I say, tell me, what do you want from this game? And most people just want to use it as an extracurricular activity. They say, I just want my kid to be exposed to the game so when they grow up, they may be able to use it as a business tool or whatnot. So I know I'm starting to ramble there, but I think the biggest thing there is that you just got to make sure that this program has what you need and that the coach knows what you're looking for too.
I totally agree. Yeah.
I think obviously you want your junior program to have social opportunities, and I'm going to throw it out there again. I think it's so important, and it's not happening near enough that coaches are giving kids the chance to get out and play the game. And if you're maybe at a driving range and you can't give them those opportunities, then you need to be telling them where these opportunities are. Um, I see so many. I meet so many kids along the way, and I might meet a kid on a driving range, and he's a pretty good kid, and I get chatting to him, and he'd take lessons from John, an hour away or something, and they have no idea. They haven't been on the golf course. They have no idea about kids golf tournaments. So I think it's just so important that coaches are educating these families on what is out there and the opportunities to go play.
I couldn't agree more. All the things you said there is what I want to put together for my future business and what I'm going to be doing here. And, hearing you repeat those things, I think it's just so important for all of us to hear. So, Michelle, you've shared so much great information, stories, experiences you've had along your journey from just a young age up all the way through your professional career and what you're doing. And again, I'm going to repeat the slogan here just so everybody can hear it. It's create experiences that encourage kids to play the game forever. Now, where could people find more about what it is that you're doing and just follow, all the cool things that you're putting out there for everyone?
Yeah, and we are on 3 social media platforms. So we're on Facebook, it's Michelle Holmes School of Golf. And we're on Instagram, Michelle Holmes Golf, and on Twitter, M Holmes Golf. And don't ask me why those three are not the exact same. I guess I had no idea how much the social media was going to kick off back in the day. So
and
I
and
should be.
I totally recommend anybody to go follow all of those because, like I said, the things that you put out and the things that you send out, I think it's just great for everybody to see. And there's just a lot of good information that you put on there, and I just think it's awesome. So I appreciate you and what you've been able to do for the game of golf, for junior golf, and what you share with everybody, I think is just awesome. So before I let you go, you've got to give me, what is your final piece of advice for raising golfers?
I'm going to give you one line. So I'm going to actually keep this one short. This is going to be my fast round. Sorry. I'm just going to say, just to enjoy the journey, enjoy every stage of the journey. These kids grow up way too fast. Please enjoy every stage, and just always arrive at the golf course a happy family, and always leave the golf course that same happy family.
Perfect. Great advice. I love that. So, Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and share all of this with us here on the podcast. And, I appreciate everything that you've done as far as sharing some of the episodes that we've had and just the support you've had as well with the podcast. And like I said before, just everything you're doing for the game of golf. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Travis. Thank you for having me. And I love everything you're doing too. Keep doing it.
Thank you. What a great conversation with Michelle. She shares so much of her experience with us, and for me, there was a lot to take away as both a parent and a coach. I think understanding what children want in a learning environment that creates these wonderful experiences for them is so important. And even myself, I think I have so much more I need to do as far as reflecting, researching, and just kind of analyzing the whole environment that these kids are in. I really like how she thinks children can get into tournament play early on, but as adults, we just have to have the right values and expectations around how that will lead to positive experiences. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Michelle Holmes. I know I did. Let me know any questions or any feedback you have on this episode, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. If you enjoy listening to our podcast and the information you got from this episode, do us a favor and continue to support us by hitting that subscribe button and giving us a 5-star review. Your continued support will help us continue to grow and be able to interview some of the most experienced parents, coaches, and players in the golf industry to help you continue to raise your golfer to their full potential.